Get ready to open your mind. Drones! They're no longer science fiction anymore. We're using drones to explore unknown new worlds. They're being tested on lonely highways and above. From the early days of radio-controlled hobbyists to missions on Mars and beyond, drones are already here, impacting our world from unmanned tasks in supermarkets to mapping our communities and saving lives. Drones create fantastic new ways to explore and discover. Programmed to operate in other worlds and flown with tomorrow's technology today, drones are changing our world. Join us and open your mind to drone technologies.
And thank you, Uda. Uda is our unmanned teaching assistant, and he's the one who's introduced us today for our Day 3, November 18th, 2020. We're going to cover operational rules. Now, we're going to go through this today, and we, at the very end, there'll be a time for asking questions. So have your questions ready, and I'm really excited to announce that I've got a co-host today. It's Shane Olsen. He's an aviation safety inspector and UAS specialist with the FAA, and he is going to help out with stating the rules exactly as they're written. So let's get started. We're on Day 3, passion to profession. That's where you take yourself from a recreational flyer to a professional commercial flyer. So I'm really excited to get this started. I am actually using the rules that are on the FAA.gov/UAS website. And I suggest you go in there and you access it, navigate it, and discover it. There's a whole bunch of stuff there that is just hidden gems that will help you in your unmanned aircraft systems flights. So here we are. We're in the site right now, certified pilots, and those are the rules we're going to learn. We're going to learn the rules. And so what I did, I took a picture of the rules. And so these are what we're going to be covering today. Now, I'm not going to go into any specifics, and I'm not going to really do anything complex, but I have been flying now for 6 years, and I've run into issues as I've taken my drone into the sky that I can share with you with each one of these rules and how I've been able to comply with them. So before I get started, Shane, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with the FAA. That'd be great.
Okay. I am a aviation safety inspector here at the Atlanta Flight Standards District Office. I've been in the job for about 6 years. Before that, I did a little bit of law enforcement, and I was in the military. I did some military aviation background as well. I started off in Texas with the FAA, and then I came out to Atlanta, and I'm actually, my primary job is I'm a principal avionics inspector. But I have a little secondary job that's more like a primary these days, which is I'm the lead UAS specialist for the office. Pretty much we investigate incidents and accidents and things like that. But some makes us, we get deep into the weeds and deep into the rules and everything. We also give, when people call with questions, we're able to help them out as well.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you. But these are the operational rules. And again, as I told you, these are things that I've run across in dealing with the operational rules that will probably help you in your operations in the future. So let's get this thing rolling. And what is an operational rule? Well, operational rules are put into place to ensure safe airspace. And it's basically, do you need approvals? What's the pilot's responsibility? What's the safety of the aircraft? And I've broken it down into a couple of sections. And so we're going to just cover those rules as we go along. And so I've got 6 rules here: drone registration, beyond line of sight, over people, time of day, speed limit, and altitude limit. So I'm going to go over each one of these rules individually. And Shane, if I say something that you can add further illustration to, I would really appreciate your assistance on this. We're going to start first, though, with the drone registration. In drone registration, it's required if your drone is between 0.55 pounds to 55 pounds. Now, there are waivers that you can get for these operational rules, but we'll just touch on them at the end. I'm just going to say how to be compliant with the rules as they are today without going for a waiver. So the weight of the drone is the weight plus the cargo and your use. So you can have several different uses. You can have civil uses, such as for government. You can have commercial uses, which is what I am, a commercial 107 pilot, and you can have recreational rules. So what you need to do is you go to the FAA Drone Zone website and you create yourself an account and you choose your use and you attach the ID that you're given to the drone. Now, like I said, it's for commercial and recreational. I've got both registrations. Recreational, that registration goes on all my recreational drones, and for commercial, every drone has to be certified and registered on its own. So it's $5 for registration. It's relatively cheap. And at Drone Education Services, we're really pushing that people register their drones. I read something this morning that over 20 million households have stated that they have drones, and that's a large number when only 1,700,000 are registered. So we need to make a big push to get people to register their drones. First rule we're going to go over, which is pretty much considered the holy grail of rules, is line of sight. And line of sight is you've got to keep that drone within line of sight of the operator or a visual observer who's standing within close proximity to the operator, that they can verbally tell what's going on in three-dimensional space. But you run into issues out there, and I've run into these issues. And one of the issues is that you can fly the drone to a space that's not beyond your line of sight. You can see it; it's in the sky. But what happens is that you look down at your controller to see that everything's working properly, and it disappears, or you can lose it behind a tree. So you've got to have those risk mitigation procedures to see the drone. And as you can see, look how easy the drone can disappear within the shadows. So when I'm in an operation and doing a line of sight operation, one of the things I try to do is I try to look, and if I see that there is a potential to where I might end up with an obstruction in front of me, I already set it in my head what I'm going to do if that were to occur. Also, if I need a visual observer, they're the ones that are looking at the drone in a three-dimensional space. Now, you might think that the camera of the drone is a good way of looking at it, and it is if you're looking straight ahead, but you can't see what's above it, below it, or behind it. So you really need to see the drone in a three-dimensional space, and I'll give you a good example of what happened to me. I was flying down in South Georgia, and I was flying off a marina, and as I was flying the drone, I had a sea eagle start to dive on the drone. And I looked at the footage later, and I never saw the sea eagle go in front of the drone. It was always diving behind it. And I was able, because I was looking at it straight on, I was able to bring it back. Now, there's another reason why you want to have beyond line of sight, well, not beyond line of sight, but line of sight viewing of this, because you get a stronger transmission signal. Shane, is there anything that you'd like to add to line of sight?
Hey, actually, I like to go back to our when we were talking about registrations of drones. Yeah, as a recreational, everyone knows that you can apply for a registration. It costs $5. That registration number that you get, you put it on your outside of your drone or any other drones you have. That one registration number you can apply to every drone. You're good to go. Okay. That's for 0.55 pounds and up to 55 pounds. Now, let's say the purpose of this presentation is actually, going from a recreational to a commercial drone operator, where you go out and do real estate or whatever you decide to do to maybe make a little bit of money, or even certain YouTube videos is actually part of that as well, where you should be a 107. Now, when we talk about registration, you can have a Maverick Mini or anything that is under 55 pounds. If you're going to use that little Maverick Mini that's under a half a pound for commercial use, you need to register it. So the weight doesn't matter. So when you go into a 107 world, you have to register You're all your drones. So each drone that you have, if you have 5 drones, it's going to cost $15. So you register each drone under commercial. So it's kind of that's the way the rule is actually kind of written, and that's how it's been put down to us and how to interpret that. So just remember that when you're a recreational, one registration number, you're good to go on all your drones, 55 pounds and over. And when it comes to your commercial drones, you need to register each drone, and it doesn't matter the weight. So,
Thank you, Shane. Thank you. Do you want to talk about the line of sight?
I can talk about beyond line of sight. So beyond line of sight, it's kind of tricky. You can have visual observers and stuff. With a show of hands, can I see how many actually wear goggles? First person view. Okay, who does not wear goggles for first person view? They use this naked eye. So pretty much everyone else probably has a set of those was it FPVs?
FPVs, yeah.
So that,
Goggles.
yes, FPVs. Okay. If you're wearing FPVs, you should have a visual observer with you. Okay, so you're flying your drone, you're using the FPVs. The visual observer with you is actually keeping an eye on the drone, and that is a good rule of thumb there. So a lot of people get that mixed up, and I can at the end of the presentation I can actually point to certain things. Actually, I'll point you to a good AC to look up and read, where it will tell you all about FPVs and beyond line of sight.
Thank you, Shane. I do have a question for you on visual observer and the pilot. Do they have to be within close proximity, or can they use any kind of radio transmissions to talk?
You have to be able to communicate. Okay, you have to have kind of a plan to communicate is what it is. Mm-hmm. Because beyond line visual observers, they got, when you have your little brief before you take off, you need to make sure, say, okay, what's going to happen if this happens? How am I going to inform you of, okay, it's the drone's over here, for example. Okay. So 107.31 allows for FPV if a visual observer is used, and the visual observer is following 107.33. So throughout the entire flight, the ability to describe in this section is exercised by the visual observer. Okay, so in other words, you're able to communicate. So if you have a radio down, I'm not going to say that's good or bad, but that's just some good practices, because when it comes into the rules, you just have to dig in there and actually read them and kind of understand them along with it answered. But we need to be careful on how it's interpreted.
All right. Well, let's go on to the next rule then. Flying over people. Now, this was a E-River's 100th anniversary. I went to school there. My kids go to school there, and they asked me to film the anniversary. And one of the things that I will say is that do not fly over people that are not part of your operation. And in a situation like this, I actually had a lot of parents come racing up to me and say, hey, listen, I see the drone up in the sky. It's flying over Peachtree Creek, but why can't you bring the drone in and fly over the kids? And I was like, because it's unsafe. They're not part of the operation. What if something were to happen? And there is a lot of undue influence out there with people that, want you to fly over them and stuff like that. Don't do it. If they're not part of the operation, don't do it. And one of the things that I did find was that this shot right here was right over our LTZ, landing and takeoff zone. And one of the things that I did notice is that kids are fascinated with drones. So be extra careful. I actually had to bring a couple of people out there for crowd control. And that was just to prevent the kids from coming into the zone where I was landing and taking off. So what I did was I basically took the drone up. It flew over Peachtree Creek, which ran parallel to the field, and was able to get some great shots. Um, but do not fly over people that are not part of the operation. Shane, you have anything that you might want to add to this one?
That's good advice. If you don't have a waiver, and waivers are hard to get, they're for flying over people, you're looking, the percentage of getting waivers approved are pretty low for flying over people. But
Yeah.
So if you just be careful, but there's also another thing, and there's another rule where you may not be flying over people, but you'd be flying near people. And you have to account for that rule as well. And if you're flying near people and you can determine if something happens to the aircraft and it loses control and crashes into a car or a person, you may not have been flying over them, but you were flying maybe too close.
And drones are coming now with zoom cameras, so you don't have to be in close proximity. So you can actually be away and photo and using post production. You can actually zoom in if you'd like to after you're done. And so that's what we were able to do. And this is about as close as a zoom we could get before it started to fuzz out on us. But that can serve adequately too. So let's go at civil twilight. Now, civil twilight is 30 minutes before sunrise and 30 minutes after sunset. And some of the best pictures you can get are done in this time. However, you need to have anti-collision lighting on your drone, and that's lighting that can be seen from 3 statute miles away. So we've got LumiCubes that we put on our drones, and you can see that you can get some fascinating pictures, but you are not allowed to fly at night under the Part 107. And I actually went ahead and I looked and they say we got the Part 107 on the left, and then we have the rules for recreational on the right. And Shane, it's kind of misleading. It says that we have to fly within civil twilight for Part 107, but on the front page of the UAS for recreational flyers and modelers, it says that they can fly at night. Can you shed some light on this one?
I can. So if you look at your drone, if you go to FAA.gov, you go to recreational, and there's a set of guidelines. And if you go down to number 6, it says do not fly at night unless your drone has lighting to allow its location and orientation at all times. Now, when we talk about recreational flying, I'm going to ask you, what community-based organization rules are you following? Guidelines are you following? And if you can't tell me that, it's going to revert back to 107. And that's same thing with, so if you go into recreational, you're flying, let's say you are flying at night, someone does approach you. You says, I don't know. I'm not flying over. I'm not flying under any community-based organization or any guidelines. Then you're going to revert back to there. Revert back to 107. So with that in mind, if everyone can write this down, if you look at a AC 91-57 Bravo, it tells you what you can do recreational. And pretty soon there's going to be a test coming up for recreational, and also the CBO requirements and procedures are going to be coming out as well soon. So just be on the lookout for that.
When you say community-based guidelines, I know AMA has got a set of community-based guidelines. I really don't know of anybody else that does. And if I'm flying under AMA, do I have to fly at an AMA approved field to fly at night?
Whatever their guidelines is, that's what you need to follow. And right now,
Okay.
The Reauthorization Act just got passed in 2018. So with anything with government, we're going through the rulemaking process. and there's different, and we are identifying what a community-based organization is, like AMA. The other thing is same thing with the recreational test. They're working on the rulemaking process. They go through that and they work on that as well. So basically, going back to tonight, I'm looking at it right here. It says limited recreational operations will be governed by the safety guidelines of the CBO and interim guidance stated in AC 91-57 Bravo. So those safety guidelines will be developed in coordination between the FAA and the industry. So the industry, what they call the DAC, and DAC is going to be talking with the DAC's going to be talking with the FAA. It's the Drone Advisory Committee, and they're going to put out some recommendations. And and then that will go into the rulemaking process, and then stuff will start opening up a little bit more. But it's not a hard yes and a hard no answer for that. But you just have to be able to follow the whatever community-based organization it is, and the interim guidance that's stated in AC 91-57B.
Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you. Let's move on to the next topic. 100 miles an hour. Well, if you've ever been to a baseball game and you've seen a pitcher pitch a fastball, you know that that thing is flying pretty fast. Now, I've got several drones, and the one drone that I'm using right now is DJI Mavic Pro, and that drone flies around at a max speed with being able to use all its sensors of probably about 23 miles an hour, but I can put it into a sport mode. In a sport mode, essentially takes it out of my sense and avoid sensors on there. So it really flies pretty fast. So I normally do urban environments, and I don't fly anything, with excessive speed, because I've got smaller lots that I'm looking at and things of that nature. But 100 miles an hour is pretty fast, and I'm still kind of baffled as to why it's that fast. But you can't fly your drone over 100 miles an hour, and I don't really know of any drones that can get up to 100 miles an hour right now. Shane, are there anything additional you want to add to this one?
No, not at this point. But if you actually hold on, I want to pull up the limitations for you. And that is the 100 mile an hour rule is actually part of the 107 limitations. Is pretty much what it is. So if you go here, it's 107.51, and it talks about the ground speed, but it also talks about altitudes, and it talks about how you can fly within 400 feet of a structure, and it even talks about how far you're supposed to stay away. So before you operate, just go ahead and dig into it. The rules, since we are talking commercial, this is how to talk about getting into commercial operations. 107.51 is you're going to have to comply with 107.51.
Okay. And considering that, where I think our next slide is that 400-foot AGL, which is above ground level. Now, they realize that some improvements are larger than 400 feet or taller than 400 feet. So the rule, as I understand it, is that you can fly within 400 feet of the side of the structure all the way to 400 feet over the structure, kind of like putting a silo over the building. And so they do have that. Now, I do have a drone that's got altitude limitations that I can preset in it, that in order to be able to do those kind of operations, I'd have to take it off those presets. Well, this is pictures that I took, and I just wanted to show that what you could see from 400 feet, and that's 0.3 miles away, and just the altitude. Now, I fly mainly in the city, and I won't typically, only for this demonstration, I took the drone up to 300 feet, but I usually keep it on 200 feet or lower. And one of the things that I have noted is that I just don't want to fly that high, because I can fly within the space. It's clear, but I also have helicopters that might come into the area at 7:30 in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon. And I also have that occasional police helicopter that might come into the area. Uh, but as you can see, what you can see from 300 feet, you can actually get a pretty good view of what's going on altitude wise. 200 feet, you can get pretty much the same views. How about another set of operational rules? The right of way, airspace classification, pilot in command, visibility, careless operations, and hazardous material. Let's go over each one of these. Well, right of way. I always give manned aircraft the right of way anytime because I'm flying an unmanned vehicle. So I always bring the drone down if I see or sense helicopters in the area. Now, one of the ways that you need to be aware is that one of the things that Part 107 will do for you is that once you register yourself and you get yourself into IACRO, you'll be under FAA safety and you'll get notifications for TFRs that might come into your area, such as when the president comes to visit. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is that in trying to establish, and I'm working with one of the Facebook groups here in the state of Georgia, that if I get notified of a TFR, I'm going to basically post it on to these Facebook groups so that they are also notified, because a lot of recreational flyers are not notified whether or not they can fly. Now, my drone also is equipped with the ability to be geofenced so it won't take off the ground. But I do have an older drone that doesn't have that geofencing. I don't fly it anymore, but it also, if I wanted to take it off the ground and I didn't know any better, I probably could fly in a TFR, which stands for temporary flight restriction. I'm sure this is a big issue. Shane, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this one?
Before you fly, you just need to go check your TFRs. Yeah. Go to your website, go check the TFRs. Go to FAA website to check your TFRs and your NOTAMs. Okay, don't rely on DJI software to tell you there's a TFR. Okay, because you as a drone pilot, you are responsible to know that as well. Okay, because if you fly in a TFR, you can get in a lot of trouble, especially if it's a security TFR. So that's just one thing. And then once that TFR is active, there's no getting special permission to fly in it or anything. You're gonna have to contact the author of that TFR, and usually you're gonna say reschedule. So if you have a real estate shoot you need to do and TFR, you should be able to look a few days prior to that TFR becoming active if you're able to do that real estate shoot.
You know what? I also preach about using redundant features. I have several apps that I do use to check airspace. I also go into the TFRs and NOTAMs that are issued by the FAA. So it's not just, don't rely on one set of data to determine whether or not you can fly, because sometimes the data can be conflicting. And if ever you do get any kind of conflicting reports, that's a good indication that maybe you need to go back and research to see what you actually can do or cannot do. So let's move on to the next one. How about airspace, permission required? Now, if you're going to be a Part 107 pilot, you're going to probably have to, on occasion, get permission to fly in certain airspace. And what's great is that they've got now the LANC system, which is the low altitude authorization notification capability. And that's almost real-time notification for flying in an area. And I've actually, I use it quite often for a lot of my shoots, and that will basically notify the FAA that I want to do an operation and be able to fly. But to be able to pass your Part 107 test, you're going to have to understand and learn how to read one of these maps and understand what the types of different airspaces are that you'll be flying in. So for recreational pilots, you can fly in what's called uncontrolled airspace, which is Class G, but recreational pilots, until they've got the authorization capabilities, are not allowed to fly in E, D, C, B, or A airspace. Shane, I know this is a big one. Do you have anything that you want to add to airspace?
I do. Airspace, uh, be able to read what a VFR chart is, okay, and what exactly is a Class B, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta airspaces and Echo, and what you are allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do in those areas. Okay, that's going to be on your test. But when we go into Lance, I want to discuss Lance a little bit. If you look in the facility map, that's you'll be able to look up it's on our website. You'll be able to look at where you want to fly at. Some facility maps are green, other ones are red. And if you look at it, if you look at the grid, you'll have a 100-foot radius, 100-foot ceiling, and it'll go all the way out to 400 feet. So if, let's say, if you're looking at PDK, which is airport just north of Atlanta, you're going to have Peachtree DeKalb. You'll have 100-foot level. Then a couple miles out from the airport, you'll have 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet. Okay. If that facility map is green on your phone, you'll be able to ask for permission to fly in that grid area. So if it's a 400-foot grid level, you'll be able to fly up to 400 feet in that grid level once you ask for permission through the app on your phone. Okay, let's say the Lance facility map, it's red. It means it's not active. You're going to have to go through drone zone to get authorization to fly. You're not going to be able to do it instantaneous like Lance. So you go into drone zone, and let's say you have a bunch of work to do in a month. So you go in drone zone and you ask for permission that way. It'll take a little bit longer, and you're going to get like one of those old school written waivers. So that's pretty much with airspace. So it's really important to actually check the airspace around you and everything. They used to have a 5-mile radius where you weren't allowed to fly near airport, heliport, or anything within 5 miles. That pretty much went away. And if you follow the 10737, which is operation near aircraft right away rules, and then you're going to look at 10741, which is operations in certain airspace. When you get prior authorization from air traffic control, you're going to do that through drone zone, or you're going to do that through the Lance. So.
And there are sources such as Kitty Hawk and AirMap that have Lance capabilities that work directly with the FAA. And so what I'll do is I'll be on those systems, and if I'm in an area, I'll seek approval to be able to fly. And like I said, it's pretty much real-time approval, and you'll get notification on your phone that you are cleared to fly. And that way, it's a great thing because they know who's in the air, they know what you're doing, and they know they may not know why you're flying, but since I'm notified them, that I guess it gives them a sense of confidence that they know that my drone's in the sky and that I'm responsible and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing correctly. So let's move on to the next one, and that is pilot in command. Now, the pilot in command is responsible for everything that goes on with the operation. They are responsible to make sure they've got the drone registered. They're make sure that they've got their certifications. If they need to do any kind of crew management, they notify people where the flights are going to be and what can be done on those flights. This was an operation that I was working with that we actually did a film production, and we were notifying everybody to stay out of the range. We were staying over we had a flight pattern from our landing and takeoff zone to over a body of water, and we were able to keep that drone over that body of water and get these shots for the television show Notorious. And you can see that using post-production, you can zoom in and get quite good pictures. So on this production, we used 4 people. We had the pilot, we had the cameraman, we had crowd control, and we had a visual observer. And one of the things that we did was we ran test shots over and over and over again before we actually flew the operation for real, so that we knew and everybody else knew the safety of the operation. It's so important that if you're working with other individuals, that they understand a drone can be serious business, and that, the best thing that was ever described that day was the fact that the producer came, or the director came out, and he stated, the first 2 or 3 times you're really excited that there's a drone in the sky, but about the fourth or fifth time you start to forget it because people's attention span kind of dissuades. So always be aware when there's a drone in the sky, and always make sure that if there are other people that are out there in the area, that they know what's going on, and that you have mitigation procedures that are in place. So if anything were to occur, you'd be able to give sufficient warning to make sure that nobody got harmed or no property got damaged. Shane, is there anything that you'd like to share with you on pilot in command?
Pilot in command, it's covered under 107.19. And remember, I talked about earlier about flights over people. If you look at Part C of 107.19, it says the pilot in command must ensure that the small unmanned aircraft will pose no undue hazard to other people, other aircraft, or other property in event of lost control of the aircraft for any reason. So pretty much is, if you have a pilot's license, let's say a private pilot's license, and you put your family in that aircraft and you fly off, you're responsible for the safety of everyone on board. Well, that's the same with a drone operator. You are responsible for the safety of those around the operation. So that's why you have 107.19 to be able to actually read that, because you're directly responsible and you have the final authority for the operation of the small unmanned aircraft system. So let me ask everyone this. Is the person using the controls, can he be the remote pilot in command? Can it be someone else that's not? Can a remote pilot in command be someone else other than the person using the controls? Well, let's say you're training someone, you're training someone, right? How to fly a drone. You are the remote pilot in command. You have the direct responsibility and the final authority. So that's it's kind of one of those tricky ones, but the first person I'm going to ask is if there's an incident is, okay, who was the remote pilot in command? And it's not necessarily the person having the control, using the controls.
Well, I got a good point to make on that one, Shane, and that is I've actually now got 2 controllers, and I can actually put one of my controllers as a secondary controller. And so if I'm training somebody, I can have a primary controller just in case I start to see that they're getting into a little bit of trouble. Because I was training somebody one time ago, and they actually took my drone and flew it straight into a tree. And nothing's more frustrating than when you're sitting there and you're going, my gosh, you just flew my drone into a tree. Thank goodness the damage was not that severe. But if you're training somebody, be aware that accidents are probably more likely to happen because somebody is taking it up for the first time and doesn't really quite understand the dynamics, the depth perception, the things that you learn with experience and training. So thank you, Shane. Thank you for saying that. All right. So to become a pilot, you're going to register your drone. Of course, you're going to have a drone that you're going to be flying. You're going to be taking what's called an aeronautical knowledge test. And you're also, for the first time, going to have to take a safety class. And then you're going to get a certification that is good for 24 months. Now, your certification is going to have no expiration date, that laminated card, but the proof of certification is going to be you're taking the test. Now, I have heard several different things that that the FAA wants us to have a copy of the last test we've taken to show that we are in compliance with this, along with our certification card. But is there anything that you can clear up with this, Shane, what we're required to have out there in the field with us as a remote pilot?
Have your copy of your registration of the aircraft. You can have
Okay.
Your 107 certificate, and another good thing to have, and you can have it on your phone, is a copy of your test. And here's why. I took my test, let's say I took my test in June. I don't get my certificate until July or August. Okay, so I have a temporary certificate I'm doing for a while. I get my hard plastic one in the mail from the FAA, and I'm a 107 pilot now. Okay, cool. Okay, so the date on that certificate is going to be later than the date on the test. So how do we maintain currency? Can anyone tell me? For someone, for just 107, you have to take a recurrent test, correct? So that recurrent test is good for, so you're good for 24 months from the date of the test, not the date of the certificate. So that's why it's important just to snap a picture of it on your phone, keep it on your phone. And then when, if someone asks, hey, what's your currency? You'll be able to show them that you're current for that 2 years.
Thank you, Shane. Now you brought up a good point, and that is the registration. So I'm required to have a copy of the registration. The markings on the side of the drone do not are not indication that I've got registration.
Well, let's say if a law enforcement officer comes up to you and says, hey, is your drone registered? You'll be able to show them that it's registered. Okay, so basically you're just proving that you're complying with the provisions of 107.13.
Oh,
and 107.13.
Thank you.
You must comply with those provisions of 91.203.82. So, which is registration of aircraft. So you're able to just approve that.
Thank you, Shane. I don't know how you could remember all these points, but that is, thank you so very much. Let's go into 3 miles. Well, you're not allowed to take the drone up unless you can see for 3 statute miles. And so what I've done is I'm taking the drone up, and you can see that I'm looking 3 statute miles out. And that means that you cannot fly if there's low cloud cover or fog or possible rain. And you don't want to be flying in those kind of conditions anyway. Why? Because the drone has got internal components and the condensation can build up. Early on in my learning to fly career, I flew in fog, and when I brought the drone back, it was totally soaked. I'll never do it again. I know that some people like to take it over what they call a fog bank and take it up above that, but no, if you can't see your drone and you can't see that thing, and you can't see buildings or whatever 3 miles away, then don't take your drone up into the sky. Anything you want to add to this point?
I think I discussed this earlier. 107.51, operational limitations for small unmanned aircraft. You don't know what's on the other side of that cloud. Is pretty much what it is.
There you go.
So there's the minimum distance of a small unmanned aircraft from clouds must be no less than 50 feet below the cloud and 2,000 feet horizontal from the cloud. So the rule is, it's plain as day. It says it right there. That is your operational limitations. So best thing to do is just follow those operational limitations to a T, and we'll be fine.
All right, here's the one that I'm the most confused on, and that is the moving vehicle one. They say I can't fly a drone from a moving aircraft, but I can fly from a moving vehicle over a sparsely populated area. Now, does that include a car and a boat, or just a car, or is there any kind of clarification to this? Because when I see sparsely populated, um, you know, I really don't think it's that safe to be doing anything from an automobile anyway, but maybe from a boat.
This is kind of a tricky one. You may not operate a small unmanned aircraft system from a moving aircraft or from a moving land or waterborne vehicle unless the small unmanned aircraft is flown over a sparsely populated area and it's not transporting any person's property for composition or hire. So in other words, you're not UPS or Wing right now. Don't really have anything else on that except I wouldn't do it, but there is a a little bit of a small window in there where it says over sparsely populated area and how you are able to articulate what a sparsely populated area. It's on you on how to tell us.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you. I actually, when I'm doing this, the operational rules, when I'm talking about them, I typically leave the moving vehicle out because I really just don't know how to cover it that well. I don't want to influence anybody to fly from the automobile or from a boat. So thank you for clearing that up. All right. Unsafe operations. Well, typically an unsafe operation is not unsafe until an accident occurs. And I have actually seen drones. This was the last flight of this drone. What had happened is that the controller said that it started to pitch in the air, and as it was pitching in the air, the pilot juiced the power to it, thinking that it was a transmission signal problem when it was actually the battery was dying. And so by sending extra power to the drone came out of the sky. And this caused about $1,500 worth of damage to the drone. And that leads back to if you have an accident, which you hit property, well, that property's got to have fair market value of $500 or more, and that does not include your drone. So I think when it comes to accidents, Shane, how is it handled for a drone to property as far as what we should be looking at? I interpret it to be that if the property that is hit has a fair market value of $500 or more, then I need to report that accident to the FAA. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. Now, accidents.
Okay.
Accidents are also another tricky thing too. Best thing to do is let us make that determination. Give us a call. We'll let you know if you should report it to the ROC or to the NTSB. Let's say if you hit someone and they are knocked out unconscious, that will be a reportable accident. But it would be follow under both NTSB and FAA. So best thing to do is if something happens and you're not sure, give us a call. We'll make that determination. But let's say you just hit a tree with your drone. No one's hurt. There's no property damage. It's not really reportable. So if we don't count the drone damage to the drone as it being reportable. So it's $500 of property damage, like Trace says down there in the comment block, but it's property damage outside of what the drone cost. There's a chance, depending on the thing, it might be incident because you're operating under different rules, like public aircraft. If you're a public aircraft, that'll be more for police, fire and stuff. They're not operating under 107. They're operating under 91. Okay, so that would be different. But since this is if it's a 107, let's say you hit a window and it's more than $500 to replace that window, then yes, that will be reportable.
Well, let's move on. I see that we're getting close to the 2 o'clock hour. We got two more that we're going to cover, and that's hazardous cargo. Now, you can carry a camera on your drone, but you can't carry a bomb or any kind of radioactive or some sort of firearm. So, if that, the way I interpret this rule is that if it can cause harm to people or property, then don't carry it on the drone. And that even includes if you're carrying an extra lithium battery that's not attached to work the components on that drone. You can only use like the lithium batteries if one operates the motor and one operates the camera, or whatever other permitted cargoes on that drone. So don't carry anything hazardous on the drone. It was some 17-year-old kid about 4 years ago that put a gun on his drone and went out and shot some cinder blocks in the backyard. That's absolutely crazy. Just don't do any kind of thing like that. Shane, do you have anything to add to this? This is the one that scares me the most as far as somebody operating a drone, not knowing any better.
No.
Okay.
Really nothing to add on that. Actually, if you really want to look into it and read, and let's say if you got something, if you're bored and want to read, be more, you can. The Authorization Act actually covers this with drones and actually weapons being attached to drones.
Thank you, Shane. Well, let's move on to I think the last. Well, what I did was I pulled up waivers. Now, again, remember I was telling you about the FAA website, and the FAA UAS website has got a Part 107 waivers portion to it, and you can find out what kind of waivers you can get for these operations. And the really cool thing is that you can dig into it deeper. You can see what waivers were issued, and there's been 4,631 waivers issued so far, and they date back all the way to November 1st of 2016. And look at that. That was Walt Disney Resorts got the first waiver, and it was for being able to fly at night and being able to fly multiple drones. Well, what's really interesting is that you've got a waiver trend analysis. Now, I think the wording is misleading, but what they're doing is they're actually showing you what would be sufficient information to get a waiver and what's insufficient information. So for beyond line of sight, stating that you'll only fly on clear days is not sufficient information that the FAA is looking for. They're going to want to know what kind of sources you're using to obtain that information and how you've applied those sources for your operation. Shane, I know that waivers are a big thing that people are trying to apply for. Is there anything additional that you want to add to that portion of this?
I can't really discuss more on waivers. My suggestion for waivers is go ahead and we have a hotline you can actually go to on our website, and you'll be able to ask your question with the waivers. It's you can go usahelp@fa.gov. You can ask about waivers and things like that. I want to make sure I get you the correct information and drone and how drones are being how the drone rules are being developed and everything. They're pretty complex right now. So when it comes to waivers and things like that, I'm not the right person for that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Shane. But I did discover this when I was really perusing the website, and I saw this trend analysis and that this waiver trend analysis. It was really kind of interesting to see that you actually have a formation of things that the FAA would be looking for if you were going to apply for a waiver. So in conclusion, it's not just about flying. There's a lot that goes into this. You go out to Best Buy, you pick yourself up a drone, you stick it in the sky. You need to know what the rules and regulations are out there as far as to keep the airspace safe. So one of the things that I do suggest is that if you're out there, promote safe operations and promote people to register their drones. It's important. It's the way that we're going to bring this industry into the I guess the new millennia, and it's the way of the future. I'd like to thank every one of y'all for being here today. My name is Lamar Ellis again. The president of Drone Education Services. We've got a lot going on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to us, and don't forget to register your drone. And Shane, thank you so very much. Is there anything that you'd like to add at the very end here?
Yes, David Williamson, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk to you offline on that, because I'm going to do some research on that. And actually, you probably call the Rock on that as well, to actually report a drone incident. But I want to talk to you offline on that, because there's been discussions on that, but I don't want to give everyone the wrong information for the NASA form. Basically, it's the only thing I have is just be safe. Whenever you're operating a drone, you're responsible for the safety of everyone around you. You're responsible for knowing what the rules are. Don't forget, different cities and towns have their own little quirks and ordinances that deal with drones as well. We don't really touch that as far as FAA, because we're more of a safety organization, but just be sure you're aware of your location and where you're operating in as well. So I left my email address up there. You'll be able to you can email me questions. I'm usually within 24 hours. I'm usually able to research it and get back to people. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find out the answer. Usually I have people I can call up in DC that's been really involved in policy when it comes to drones. So,
well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Shane. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah. And Roger Williams, thank you. He invited me out here from the FAST team. FAST team is real good extension of the FAA. Really gets information out there. So I want to thank the FAST team for putting this together and running with it.
All right. Well, thank you so very much, and thank you, Shane. I really appreciate it. Thank you for clearing up some of these questions that we have.